And welcome back to our next episode of the Fit Affiliate podcast. And today's guest really needs no introduction, but I will anyway. Mr. Chris Spealler, icon in the CrossFit landscape, from affiliate owner, games athlete, and all-round good guy. And of course, I'm also joined by Tony as well. Let's not forget him.
Here I am.
I like how you got lumped in with the not good guy.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
As Lisa's coach, I'm always lumped in with the not.
Yeah.
That's just how it's
great. Yeah.
So he gets it on both sides of it. But her call's coming up right after this, so I'll get mine back. Don't worry.
That's it.
Sweet. Well, cool. Listen, I'm obviously very pumped that you're on the podcast. I think that I say this every single week that I'm excited to have this guest on when we do have you guys on. But yours is particularly valuable to me in terms of just where I'm currently at in life. I think there's a lot of alignment there, but I also think that because of the value of things that I get to experience in life through fitness, what you're working on right now, I think is so valuable to so many people who are in the fitness purveyor space that I was hoping we can get some time on there. But mostly it was just a chance to catch up because obviously we're both so busy that I'm like, I'm never going to make it back out to Park City, I feel like, at this point. So we're going to have to record a podcast and play pretend.
Why not? That's perfect.
For sure.
I appreciate you guys having me.
No worries. So, I mean, listen, I feel like maybe I'm biased, but everybody obviously knows who you are in the CrossFit space for sure. But I think, Lisa's introduction to you, I think, was very cool in terms of that. But I would actually push back in terms of, I would consider you now a much bigger person in the active sort of space than I would consider you as somebody in the cross. Not to say that it's a diminishment of your purpose, but you've naturally become very vocal, I guess, more so than anything, or more so public, probably more than I would say vocal about how you spend your life. And I think anybody who follows you, even remotely to a social degree on social media, or even knows you as a person, knows that like Chris kind of rings it out as it applies to life. And I think that, some people might actually look at you and be like, must be nice, right? Or they might assume that like, you spent your whole life doing that. So it's just the thing that you do is like the old guy on the slopes or something like that. But you've done a really, really cool job of explaining to people that like, no, this is what it's for, meaning fitness. And I think that part's cool. And I really wanted to jump into that, but maybe we could talk a little bit about that one in terms of how you got into all that stuff. But that's really what I was hoping to do in this episode.
Yeah. I think that's, I think it's a really valid point you bring up. And one of the things, I think there's two things, right? Is that, like, as I have made this transition sort of, right, is it's not popular. It's not the popular stream of mentality in I think the traditional kind of CrossFit community. And I think it gets there eventually for a lot of people. Eventually they're going to kind of come to this crossroads of like, hey, why am I doing this? What is this for? What is this for? And it's largely because I think we just can't sustain this high performance type mentality forever. It's just not possible. So there has to be another reason why. For me, I just grew up playing all sorts of different sports. So that was kind of like the initial expression of that. Everything from wrestling. I played golf one year in 9th grade, I think. Played with my dad growing up on and off. Played soccer. I ran track. I played lacrosse. And then there were just like kind of adventures outside of that my family would take us on when we'd visit some really cool places out west. But I grew up on the East Coast. And then mountain biking kind of popped sort of on the scene for us. Mountain bikes as kids were like these, hardtails with knobby tires. But just like every other 80s kid, we were building jumps out in the street with no helmets and all the fun stuff. So it was sort of just always a piece of what I did. And then I guess that evolution really, it was a huge part of why I wanted to move out west. So I finished wrestling in college, really wanted to go to college out west, but I didn't find a school I really wanted to wrestle at. I stayed in Pennsylvania for that. And then when I moved to Utah, this was, like 22 years ago or something like that now. That was a big part of it is I wanted to live that active lifestyle, which I did. I jumped in full ski bum for 5 years. I was working in the ski shop, selling skis and wrenching on bikes, making $9 an hour and eating ramen noodles, like, full ski bum. And that lasted for about 5 years. And then I stumbled into this thing called CrossFit, which was phenomenal and amazing. But truthfully, the way that I did it, not everyone's like this. The way that I chose to express that was so all in that I stopped doing all the things that I loved when I moved here.
Right. For sure. And that's why I think you're such a cool, sort of catalyst for this, is that I think everybody knows, Chris Spealler. At least my version of, like, it's very nostalgic to see you with large headphones on, because, like, I remember Chris Spealler with the
Yeah.
Yes.
and the big headphones and the track workouts, and then like just an arduous amount of air squats, and being like, how is he still going at that pace? Like, that's my, sort of memory. And then, but I met you, whatever, years ago, and then realized that, like, this dude is way cooler than fitness. Not that fitness isn't cool, but, like, there was more to it. And so I think for people like yourself to, and myself included, you kind of come full circle back to, I tell people all the time, I think the meaning of life truly has come around, or the purpose in life is to acquire the means in life to get back to being a child, right? Like, if you can get back to play, it's so incredibly rewarding, right? And so, we've long said on this podcast a bunch of times that the most valuable part of fitness in 100 words is the part everybody glosses over, right? It's that last sentence. Regularly learn and play new sports. And so when it came time for me to be like, dude, you're coming on the podcast, that was 100% the reason, right? Because, like, I think it's getting attention now because, like, nobody cares that I mountain bike and ski as a grown man. But, like, now that you do it and people are starting to do it, they're like, oh, so it's not so much about how much fitness I do, but how much I do with my fitness. And I think that part of it's very cool, because I don't think a lot of people knew, like, everybody knew Chris was a wrestler because that's how you had the lungs to keep doing what you were doing.
Yeah.
And he was really, really good at fitness type activities. But then you're like, no, actually, I just was always kind of into having fun. And I think that part is really the story that I'm hoping that you are starting to do a really good job of sharing. And I think people are starting to gravitate towards.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think that from my perspective, and what you said too, Tony, earlier, it could be easily twisted or perceived into, and I do not take where I live for granted, like, I am incredibly blessed, right? But it's easy for people, I think, to be like, wow, must be nice. But the reality is, like, it doesn't matter where you are. You can create adventure and experience no matter where you are. And actually, what's really cool is, for the online side of our programming, we just released what we call a field manual. And part of that field manual is, all this stuff, like, here's how to approach the programming and da-da-da-da. But one of the sections is like, hey, here's how to embrace adventure as part of your fitness, and giving people some things to do. So everybody can go get a pair of trail running shoes. And I guarantee it doesn't matter where you are. You can find a park or a trail or something to go just for a trail run. Go learn how to play pickleball. Everybody and their mom is playing pickleball right now.
And apparently
right?
getting injured, according to Forbes magazine.
I'm not playing it because I want to be against the grain. I don't want to be like everybody else. So I chose not to play pickleball.
I'm just terrible at it. I tried. So
yeah. So like, there's so many things that we can do, and it doesn't have to look like, skiing 5 feet of pow with blower pow just going over your head, but it might be like you investing in a mountain bike. It might be you investing in a gravel bike. I gravitate toward bikes in a heartbeat because they're just freaking awesome. But no matter where you live, you can get some kind of bicycle and do some kind of ride, road, mountain, gravel, downhill, dirt jumps, pump tracks. It's there. And I mean, it's like super youthful too, right? Like learning how to ride a bike when you're a kid. So I think it's way easier than people think. But the crux is they get trapped into, I think this is really true because I feel it too, is we fear that if I do a little bit more adventure and a little less time in the gym, I'm going to lose all those gains in the gym. And it's just not true.
Right. Or you hear the other side of it too, which is similar. And they're like, I can't do that. I'm going to get injured. Right. The whole point of what we're doing in the gym is to ensure that you do go to try these things, but also to prevent against those injuries. Like if what you're doing in the gym all day, every day is not affording you the ability to pick up a sport that you might once have enjoyed as a child or otherwise, like we have really missed the mark, right? Like, and I get it. And a lot of this I think is perpetuated to some degree, in terms of like the sport of fitness. And I'm not telling you there's anything wrong with sport of fitness. Obviously you being one of the most recognized people there can attest to the value of it. But a lot of people are like, I now work out so that I can compete in working out. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your thing. But there's a lot of people who are absent of a true why and a true version of life and vitality, who are just like, I don't know, I guess I'll become a competitive exerciser. And I don't want to be the one to tell you this. You don't have a chance at that. So let's go try something that's more fun, as opposed to like resigning yourself to something that is like, anybody who can tell you who competed in the sport, most of it's just not that fun. It's painful. Like there's a lot better ways to live the quality of life. And I think we live now we talk a lot about this in the podcast, these seasons through which, CrossFit has kind of grown. And you and I grew up in the genre of like, what's coming out next, right? We're just no idea what was coming out of the hopper on main site. You're just like, that's going to be interesting, to say the least. And like, we lived in that era, and like there wasn't even like cool clothes or anything else. And then I think that gave birth to a lot of different genres. But in the middle of that was a big, sort of the absence of whys. What's become wise is one of the things that we say on here a lot. And a lot of us started CrossFit because us in the early days, we all had profound whys. Right? We were chasing something that we had lost, or like we were trying to get back to something or restore something that was missing. And like, we were willing to do this random sort of cryptic thing that took place in these obscure places that were definitely sketchy. I was going to probably get more tetanus than fitness in most of these gyms, right? But we were willing to do that. We had no idea what was going to come out of it. And so I think all of us were driven by this belief that like, this was going to be the thing that was going to get us back to the thing. And then the next generation that came in was like, wow, look at all this cool stuff that's happening. These dudes are like jacked. These, chicks are jacked, like all these things. And they're like, I'm just going to do that. Right. And so this is a bit of a rant, but all of the next generation seemed to have come in without a why. Right. And so like their whys became the what's became whys. So like PRs and benchmarks and girls and all these things. And then it was natural for them to be like competitive CrossFit. Right. And then, but now here we are. Maybe it's because most of us have grown up and we've aged out and we've gotten a little bit older, but like we've gotten back to like vitality and true quality of life. And so there's a large population of people, you, Miranda, like all of us who are just like, I'm going to go do fun things with my fitness now. And so this is like the newest season and my favorite season in this CrossFit journey for so many people, where it's just like, now all of a sudden everybody's like, no, the point was always regularly learn and play new sports. That was always the point. And I think that part is a very cool generation to be a part of.
Yeah. And I think like if you go back to the original CrossFit message board, my gosh, like talk about a gold mine. You'll see conversations in there of people just trying things for the sake of experimentation.
Yeah.
So it was, I'm going to try, you would see people post like, I'm going to try Grace with a 135-pound sandbag just to see what it feels like.
Yeah.
And what's happened is we've lost this curiosity. We've lost this ability to explore this territory, but still stay kind of within the map. But instead it's been like, well, no, how do I get better at Grace? How do I get a sub 1 minute Grace? It's like, who cares? Why don't you just have fun and just still get fit doing it? And so I think that was really lost as things started to get very, very competitive, right? And again, if that's something that somebody's jam, that's totally fine. But you got to know why you're doing it. And I don't think most people, truthfully, I think the cycle's sadly been one of two things. I think that most people either couldn't come to terms with what we're talking about now. So the people that are around for those early days couldn't come to terms with that. So they walked away. They were like, I can't continue to PR. I can't do this. I can't do that. So I'm going to walk away and do other things that I find enjoyment in. Or so many people just aren't even there yet. There's so many gyms and there's so many people that haven't hit this decade or more mark. And I'm telling you, it's coming. Yeah. And it's not even because like you're getting older. It's just a training age. It's like it is coming for everyone and they don't even know it. They're going to get blindsided by it. And if we don't do the job of helping people understand really how to do this on a daily basis, the same thing's going to happen. Either people are going to get chewed up and spit out and leave, or they're going to have to come to terms on their own. So why not help people learn how to do that ahead of time? So when they do get to that crossroads, there's a way to do it.
For sure. 100%. Yeah, I think, in that regard too, increasing mortality is really not that difficult, right? I mean, as long as you maintain a relatively healthy lifestyle and do some right things and remain semi-active, it's, you know, you can extend the length of your life to a certain reasonable degree. Increasing vitality seems to be a metric that is overlooked and often just misunderstood, right? I think people just generally assume that mortality and vitality become this similar thing, but that couldn't obviously be further from the truth. And the probably the most effective and most valuable part of functional fitness, regardless of how you decide to define it, is in its ability to improve the vitality, its ability to enable you to go do things to improve the quality of your life. And, you know, not that there's anything wrong with being inside the gym, but the point of being inside the gym is to make those other 23 hours better, right? And I think that, you know, that part of it, to your point, is like, there's not a lot of staying power in PRs and benchmarks and things of that nature, because like it's a law of, you know, diminishing returns right there, right? Like it starts to the PR numbers start to slow, the nagging injuries start to increase, the interest at which point then starts to decrease, and then all of a sudden we've lost people when all we really ever had to do was encourage them to actually regularly learn to play new sports and get outside the gym and try something that they could apply this fitness to, right? And like, as a personal example for myself, I didn't put skis back on until, you know, I think I was like, actually, you want to know when I did do it? Was in Park City when I came out for a seminar in I think it was 2017 when I went out there, and I was like, I had some extra time and I was like, there's no way I'm not skiing when I'm in Park City. I hadn't skied in 20 years, but I was like, I can figure this out. Took me a minute, just so we're clear. There was a lot of pizza French fry, but like, I mean, how is it going to be in a place like Park City, sent there for a seminar? Like, I'm going to ring out this life when I'm there. And like, and then it occurred to me while I was doing, I was like, there's no way somebody who was, you know, encroaching on 40 years old is going to pick up skiing, you know, after 20 years with a conventional lifestyle that we have, you know, as an American. Like, it would have gone terrible. I would have not made it to Saturday to teach a seminar, probably been taken off the, you know, because listen, I crashed hard because I tried to ski like I was still a teenager, and that didn't take me very long to realize that, like, I am not a teenager. But, you know, I hit the ground like I was one, and I bounced back up. And like, that's when you start to realize, like, we just had the Starettes on here, we were talking about that, like, one of the greatest demonstrations of fitness is your ability as an adult to crash something. Like, when you can just eat it and get back up and be like, oh, that was unfortunate, instead of being like, yep, not going to ride my bike for the next 6 months. Like, that's a very cool thing. And you know, the whole point of that, like, the staying power isn't there, but the staying power of increasing people's quality of life is. And that's why, you know, I wanted you on here so we could talk to like the affiliate owners in general and be like, dude, you're not trying to sell them more gym time. That's not what it's about. It's never been about that. And if you think it's going to be about that, like you said, it's coming for everybody, and the staying power is just not there.
And I think, like, to that point, I remember, like, in my affiliate, I used to say to the guys, your PRs, they're great. But I know you're going to get them by turning up every day. I know that that's going to happen. The program works. It's going to happen. What really gets me excited is when you come in and go, hey, I walked up a mountain on the weekend, or hey, I, you know, rode a scooter with the kids and didn't feel like I was going to face plant or anything like that. Like, that's the cool stuff. And that is what, you know, used to excite me as an affiliate owner. But I think even in the affiliate owner landscape, because we've stopped having fun as affiliate owners because they're burnt out, they're tired, they're broke, they're everything else. It's like all about the affiliate. So they've forgotten how to have fun, and therefore makes it hard to pass that on to their community. That's not about, today you're going to back squat. I don't care what you've got going on. You are back squatting today, rather than, hey, maybe dragging a sled's better for you today. Or,
oh my gosh, needs to be, yeah. Sorry, you know, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Lisa.
No.
Yes.
That's the big, and you know, that's what I've kind of enjoyed watching in, you know, from afar, your stuff on the socials, is as you've navigated through injuries, going, hey, you know, today's workout was this, but this is what I did because it works better for me today. Fitness was still achieved, had fun, you know, still jumped in with the class, you know, whatever it is. Whereas coming from your history and legacy, it could be very easy to let the ego overtake you and go, no, I'm going to do that, even though my hip's going to, you know, throw out on my back or my shoulder. but say, hey, this is what I choose to, this is what works for me today. Overhead squatting, 200 pounds is no longer in my life goals.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost that ability.
It's so true. And it's so a shame to me that like we haven't, enough of us haven't recognized that and really tried to evolve that. And we've kind of fallen back on these nice one-liners. Well, yeah, mechanics, consistency, and intensity, and we follow that charter. And all these things are great, right? And like, in theory, they're great. But when it comes to actual application of that, and when it comes to what does that look like inside of a box, I think we fall wildly short on what that is. I cannot stand this, perpetual mentality of having to do a workout as it's written. We're like legitimately we're and it's okay to own this. I'm not saying this is bad. It's just we need to take ownership of if you are programming for a large group class, if you're programming for your gym and you have 50, 100, 300 people, I don't care how many people it is, you're giving them a generalized workout to go off of that just might not be appropriate for so many of them. And by not appropriate, I don't just mean like, hey, Tony, just use lighter weight. Like that's like scratching the surface, right? And those things can be helpful. Yes. But what if I could serve Tony, Lisa, whoever in my gym so much better by saying, hey, I know that like you really want to overhead squat someday, but here's a path to get there. And it's not just use lighter weight. Or, hey, you know what, Tony, I know you've been around for like a decade, man. Let's make this fun. Yeah. I know how many overhead squats have you done? How many couplets? How many triplets? What if we just change the script, man? And we just change the way that we approach this workout today? And in fact, I want you to slow down a little bit and I want you to do this, movement pattern, this function. And we don't have to change the stimulus of the workout because that's a big thing if we don't want to, but we sure can change like the function of the movement by saying that what I like to walk through, and Spencer and I have kind of created this path is like, hey, can we do an isometric hold with that? And if I can do that, well, then can I do a dynamic movement with that? So isometric might be, can I hold the bottom of an air squat? Okay, well, now if I can do that, can I do that dynamically? So that, can I do an air squat? Can I do a front squat? Can I do a back squat? Can I control that weight? And then, hey, well, can I do things that would be ballistic, like a wall ball, a hang power, or a hang squat clean, a med ball clean, whatever those things are, right? And instead of us feeling like we're just locked into this use lighter weight on that wall ball, Tony, it's like, hey, dude, I like your knees aren't feeling good because of this or that. Let's just try a split squat hold for this. And then maybe you can just go nuts on the rest of the workout. But man, we've just become so narrow-minded, I think, in this concept of, well, this is the workout. And if it doesn't work for you, let's just do lighter weight, lower reps. And I think everyone's going to find that we severely underserve our community. And if you've had people in your gym for a decade or more, they have to have a program adapt with them. They will not be able to continue to do it with lighter weight, lower reps. Some might, but many won't. And that's okay to say that, but we just have to do something about it.
Yeah. I think, it really is, in my opinion, and it's not so much a humble opinion because I preach about it all the time on here, I feel like, but where I think we all ended up missing the mark in this was nobody really took time to delineate and draw a line between what it meant to be a trainer, what it meant to be a coach, right? Because trainers just became like longer term, or coaches just became like longer term trainers, but there's a very big distinction in terms of what ends up happening there. And like, to your point, like training is essentially your ability to deliver and educate on a training program. And there's nothing wrong with being a trainer. And their job is instruction. A coach's job is understanding, right? And so just like as you remain a trainer for a longer period of time, you naturally will likely evolve into a coach, I would assume, to some degree. As a client, your needs are 100% going to gravitate towards a coach, somebody who, instead of teaching you more things, they're going to instead choose to understand more things about you, right? And help you understand more things about you. And like, to your point about lowering the weights, like most people think coaching and scaling are synonymous, but they're not. All scaling really is just altering the training program for the trainer, right? And there's a very narrow window of their ability to conceptualize, how can I change this workout, right? Because otherwise they'd have to change the whole thing. But a coach, we can scrap the whole thing, make complete changes, and be like, hey, no barbells in your future, because you don't have goals that even align with putting yourself in some fixed position like that. Let's use the sandbag, because your work as a firefighter doesn't have static objects where you're going to pick up that often. Like, let's keep you with more dynamic. And like, that is a very different level of understanding, which didn't take instruction. I didn't have to tell you about these things. I had to understand you and be like, let's make some changes. And so I think to that point, we see this quite a bit in terms of the reason the staying power seems to be so low for a lot of people in affiliates in CrossFit in general is that they only have access to trainers, right? And trainers are stopping at training. And then worse, in an attempt to get better, they're seeming to only want to improve their ability to become a better trainer, more education, more information. And those things are great. I'm glad that you were learning that stuff, but that does not help your ability to apply that information. And that has been an insidious epidemic in the affiliate landscape for a long time. Lots of information, no ability to implement it or apply it, right? And I think that distinction lies in, you are a trainer, now you've become a coach, and coaching is way less instruction and way more understanding. And that is a pivotal shift. And it's something that, to keep people in the gym longer, to your point, like after 10 years, get them back to fun. But that's going to require you to be like, hey, Chris, what do you want to work on today? Instead of being like, I can't ask Chris that, because if he says something off the wall, I won't even know.
Yeah, what do I do with that?
Yeah. They'll be like, I'm terrified. No.
I think some of it comes down to as well is, like, I remember it happened for me. I'll put my hand up. I had a member come to me saying the programming doesn't work for me anymore. Like, longer workouts, like throwing myself on the ground doing burpees just doesn't work. I got my best results, doing steady state stuff, more functional, bodybuilding sort of style. And at first I was like, ego, just going, well, why doesn't it works for everybody? Why doesn't it work for you? And then I saw it as an opportunity to go, okay, well, what can I give you that's going to keep you in my gym and work for you? And it's like, okay, well, how about you do this style of program when you come to class, and you can either go up the other end of the door or you can jump in class and do it. And he's like, great. He was so much happier.
Yeah.
And then a couple of other people who had bad knees and bad shoulders, I'm like, hey, the program that Bretto's doing, that might just work for you. So instead of losing people and not getting blinded by my ego, which was that momentary sting that, well, my program's supposed to work for you, this is the thing, taking that step back and going, okay, well, if that's what works for you, how do I provide that for you?
Yeah, good for you, right, to recognize that. And so one of the things we've done at Park City Fit that's been really, really great, and it's been interesting because we have a landscape here where we genuinely have people that have been with us for 15 years.
Yeah.
Like that's when they start at 40 and now they're 55, it looks different. And we have people that just walked in the door. So you can still come to a group class at Park City Fit, right? You can still sign up and do our, regular 5-class on-ramp and go through the assessment, But we can also funnel you to what we call an elevated membership. And that's where you come to us and we say, hey, what are your goals? We do that anyway, right? And if we find out that you want some things that are maybe a little bit more specific or geared toward a training for an event, we offer what we call an elevated membership. So what we do then is we say, hey, we assign you a coach, and that coach is going to take the entire week of programming that I already do, and they're going to customize it based on your needs and your goals. So now they go into, we just use True Coach. It's just an app. So they go into True Coach and they take that entire week of programming that I've already done, the generalized program, let's own it because that's what it is. And then they adjust it based on those needs. And maybe that's a limitation because of an injury. Maybe that's a preference because they just want to do more strength work, or maybe they want to do more body weight work, or maybe they want to use sandbags or get back to the fun. And then that entire week is customized for them, but they still come to class. They walk into the group class and Tony knows exactly what he's doing. He still gets to throw down with his buddies, but he's going to pick up the sandbag while someone else is getting the barbell and somebody else is getting the dumbbells. And, at the end of class, maybe some people are doing the optional accessory over here, but someone's on the runner with a weight vest and doing like a longer walk with that. And I'm telling you what, guys, like at some point, there has to be some kind of custom element to this thing. if we're going to serve these people well, and I think that gets to what you're saying, Tony, as the coach, right? Is to be a coach, we have to have the time to invest into people, to learn who they are, what they need, have weekly check-ins. And not everybody's in the market for that. And that's okay. Like you can still come to class and throw down. But when you hit that crossroad or you need a little bit of help, we're going to offer that to you in a couple different ways. And that's been a cool way for us to express that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys crush it. Truly, I mean, having witnessed it firsthand, been to the gym and see it, and that's what, not only are you just recognizably Chris Spealler, but the main reason you're on here is probably the part of it for me that I got to experience being a part and seeing the gym and seeing how people interact with it. Like it was very cool. You weren't just the dude who used to just run around the track, do air squats. Like you got it, you understood it. But what was happening in the gym is people were coaching, right? Like, and I think that people think, well, we throw the word around coaching quite a bit, is they're like, oh yeah, that meant that like they were being relentless and they were queuing and nailing. And like, those things are great, but like, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but that's still just training, right? Like that's still just instruction. What was happening, and you'll see this when you finally end up running into a coach, is rather than being relentless, they'll be relentless by saying, why are you doing that? Why is that a struggle for you? How do we change that? What could you do different? Like, and they ask you questions as opposed to just throw more stuff at you. And what I think you see across the board, to your point of like, it's not for everybody, some people aren't interested in that. I would say if we could extrapolate out into data, probably 70% of the fitness market wants to be trained, right? Because it's the easiest, most effective dose. And honestly, everybody at some point needs to be trained, right? Because until you get up to a certain point, base levels established and defined, like training is going to be the most effective use of your time. Go through this, remove the variables, follow this to some degree, but then the staying power there, the value in an affiliate, in the value in a gym is when somebody who claims to care about you actually does that by asking you questions as to, what are you trying to do? What is the point of you being here? Why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here? And getting to that, and then reminding you that like, hey, what you're attempting to do today does not even remotely in alignment with what you told me a few weeks ago. Let's change that so that we can get you to where you're trying to get to. And then when they get there, you can reevaluate. But that requires, I think, some degree of confidence for the trainer, right? To get to that point where they're just like, this is outside the scope of my understanding. How do I ask them questions? Like it's a lot like anything when you're a beginner at, right? Like you're in that sort of that phase of conscious incompetence where you're just like, I got to keep everything in the parameters, because if it doesn't, the wheels are going to fall off. So like, that's what coaching is for most people. They think is that like, control the parameters, control the variables, keep the class on time. Everything is good. I did a good job, right? And move forward. And there's nothing wrong with being a trainer, but that stuff is still training. And getting to coaching is that long-term conversation where you're just like, that's where people get their life back, because that's when they come to you and tell you, this is what I want my life to look like. Can you help me with that? And then, the answer is absolutely yes, right? And then let's get you to that point. And that takes understanding. Yeah.
And here's the hard part is that's most often not, I want to snatch 225. There's right. They might say that, but we as coaches or people that are really looking to make a difference, we have to dig a little bit and be like, well, hey, that's really cool. Like why do you have that goal?
Yeah.
And most of the time, what I've found is the reason has nothing to do with the actual number, the event. I want to run a marathon. I want to fill in the blank. But what it does is it starts to get, if we can get to the root of the reason, and that might be, you know what? I really want to run that marathon because someone told me that I'd never be able to do that, and I want to prove it. I want to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Or it's I really want to. I really want to improve my times because my self-esteem's in the bucket.
For sure.
I really want to, those are the reasons why, right? Like very, very few times are we going to have people, oh, I want to lose X amount of pounds because like what? Because my self-esteem's lower, because I don't like the way that I look. I don't like the way that I feel when I'm out, whatever that is. Right. And if we can help them identify that, and then go through that process, that gives us that trust and that ownership to be like, hey, let's come up with a game plan. and it might not look like what you originally thought, but I'll tell you what, we can get you there.
That's so powerful. I mean, it's truly the most rewarding part of of coaching, right? Of being in that caring position where somebody comes to you and says, it was the catalyst that drove me into the business in general, was like, have you worked with somebody like me, right? And to watch somebody as a human have wrote off their life, and I'll never forget that conversation. And I was floored that I was like, you're not dead. What do you mean? Like, absolutely, like I can help you. And and so when you enter into that conversation that way, and you try to understand what they're trying to get to, it's just the most rewarding part of being in that position. And all it really takes is to stop speaking and start questioning, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, that is a big missing piece in the fitness landscape in general, because the vast majority of people both want training and provide training. There's not a lot of conversation in there. Like, a good coach is both a trainer and a coach, but most trainers just aren't coaches, right? And they're not going to, because like the worst case scenario is if I sit down and you come at me with something that does not fit inside my theoretical framework of education,
yeah,
I'm going to lose you, right? And they have this scarcity mindset around it. But dude, there is nothing that's more impactful, valuable, and appreciable than just those conversations. And it's just, hopefully we can get more coaches, more affiliate owners, more people in general, just sit down and be like, why? And like, because to your point of the 225, like, you're establishing a mimetic goal because you don't want to establish the ecological goal. And that ecological goal requires you to some degree take some ownership of that. Like, I feel uncomfortable. I feel a certain way about myself. And that's okay, because you're safe here. Like, let's define that so that we can actually get past that. Because I'm going to tell you right now, 225 is a great goal, but it does nothing for your quality of life, except for that you get to tell everybody in the gym that you did it.
Yeah.
But that thing that's inside is still going to be there.
And I think, though, as trainers move towards coaches and learn how to have those conversations, it's also learning how to sit with and hold the space, but sit with the answers. So when someone's saying to you, yeah, look, I hate myself, like, my partner doesn't find me attractive, and like, that can be uncomfortable to sit in that space and not go, okay, so let's just get you on the treadmill, let's go, rather than going, okay, how long has this, felt like this? What can we do to change? Rather than going, oh, this is awkward. Let's go run some laps. Let's do that. And I'll give you some broccoli. Like, let's go. Yeah. It's having that skill to, and Tony, like, as my coach, we've sat in that space a lot where he's asked me and I've shared the uncomfortable thing and he's sat there and held the space. And then we work through it. But it's having that skill to be able to do that and being okay with you as a coach or a trainer progressing to be coached, to be vulnerable yourself and sit in that space going, I see you and I've got you. And like you said, Chris, let's come up with a game plan. Let's do this.
Yeah. I mean, what a totally opposite script of, the Globo gym or these large, I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that at a 600 membership thing. No. But reality check, guys, like, if you're running an affiliate, that's probably never going to be how many people you have.
You don't want it to be.
Yeah. So like, what are you trying to do? Right. And chances are that if you are like me, or like, especially I was in the past, like, running your box is a struggle. Right. And like, financially, it might not be that great. And how do you bring value to your community? And how do you have a price point that matches that? And how do you stand out above everyone else around you? These are the things that are like a piece of that puzzle that are going to do that. And you can't, this is maybe going like way off the map, but like, you can't do what we're talking about unless your business is successful. Because if your business isn't successful, it's not there for anybody. It's not there for you. It's not there for your trainers, your coaches. It's not there for your members. And so you need to start to have a mindset of, how do I run a successful business so I can make the biggest impact I can with the people around me? Because if it's not successful, it's not going to be there for anybody.
Absolutely. That's a mic drop moment right there. Cause it's the truth, right? It's the thing, it was the founding principle behind Fit Affiliate, which was like to protect the affiliate model, which had nothing to do with, best practices, systems, procedures. There's no template. It was literally just, hey, you're the constant in the problem. Let's address that so that we can better enable you to address the situations that are happening. So that when we say protect the affiliate model, isn't that we want to protect HQ or the brand, like we're in support of that, but it's really that like there's hundreds of people, if not thousands, who will walk through that door at some point, and you need to make sure that you can be there for them. But to your point, Chris, like until you're successful, the whole thing is essentially a house of cards. And so at that point, it's like, you know, you're not only is it a risk for you, your family, and the coaches, but like these people who, you know, are putting their trust and effort into this thing, it's going to be questionable. And we've got to operate from that position of abundance. And that's a whole, you know, long conversation in itself, is how as a landscape, we all shifted from abundance to scarcity. And, you know, and now we've got coaches who are afraid to share their clients with other people, when we know who's like, if I have a client who needs Chris and I know Chris is the best person for him, I'm sending him to Spiel, right? Like, but most coaches are not in that position. They're in that scarcity position where they're just like, oh, I know he needs Chris. Let me just learn what Chris is doing so that I can sell him what Chris is doing. And like, that's never what it was supposed to be about. Like if we go back to, you know, the message board, the beauty of CrossFit was it was open source, right? Because like coaches are nothing more than really guides. Like it's our job to get you to the person you need in your journey, not to be the person and be your journey. And, you know, a lot of that comes down to your point, Chris, like, and that requires abundance, and abundance requires you to get your shit together. Really, you know, and you've got to get the gym together. You've got to get the business together, because until then, how do you care? You can't. It's impossible. Your framework, your field of view is so narrow because you're in survival mode. You can't see the periphery.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like, I think it takes the icky feeling out of sales, right? As everybody feels like really icky with that word. But if you really care, right? This is a cool drill I do with my coaches. Maybe this isn't at all what you guys want to talk about, so sorry.
Here we are.
But okay. I'll often be like, hey, you know, make a list of 10 people you really think you can help. And you really want to help. Start there, and let's start to learn how to have those conversations, and know that they're going to say no. Know that they're going to probably refuse your help, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to get there. You know, like we just need to ask more questions.
Yeah.
Well, hey, what have you tried in the past that didn't work? Why didn't that work for you? What is holding you back? You know, and if it's finances, or if it's, you know, we just got to get to the root of that and help them. And some people aren't in the market for more, but other people are. And if here's what I think what really hit me is, if you don't make the effort to reach out to them, and you don't make the effort to help solve their problem, they're going to go somewhere else to have that problem solved.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad about trying to help them solve their problem and getting paid for it, because that's what you do for a living.
And most people in life have never had someone ask them those questions. Like they're used to going to the Globo gym, going, here, we'll give you a program, which is the same program they've given to the 599 people ahead of you. And they'll give you a quick 10-minute tour, and away you go. And they hook you up with a trainer for 30 minutes who will sit there on his phone while you're on the elliptical or whatever. And then good job, off you go. That's what they're used to. But when someone sits down and wants to have that, like, I see you conversation, and I want to know, like, where you're at and what, like, tell me what hurts. It's a very unusual situation for them, which is what can really set us apart in what we do. Like we said, you're not going to get that in the Globo gym, but showing that we care and actually seeing someone not just as a swipe card through the door is hugely impact on someone's life who has never been asked those questions before. Ever.
You know, I think, you know, to some degree, the definition or the identity or the word gym is a part of that problem, right? Like, you know, we're gym owners, you're gym owners. People come in to do gym things. And what ends up happening for a lot of people in this situation, in this conversation, if we're going to engage in these services inside the business, you're going to find a lot of perplexed people who come in, they're like, this does not feel like gym type things. And like, that is the most valuable thing that you could possibly do, because you will have weeded out all of your non-ideal clients, your non-avatar clients so quickly. And it's just so, just by knowing what it is that you do and how you do it differently is not about, you know, why you're valuable. It's helping people understand that, like, hey, you're just not going to be a good fit for me. But, you know, it's that gym sort of thing. Cause, you know, at Park City, exercise happens there, but I would not by any definition consider that place to be a gym by conventional gym standards. And I think that what we have in the entire affiliate landscape is that exact same thing where, yeah, exercise happens here, training happens here, arduous physical endeavors happen here, but like bigger conversations happen here, life changes happen here. We give people their life back here, and like that's not happening in a gym, but there's no better word for it, right? And I think that, you know, that plays a role in, you know, this defeatist sort of notion, this reductionist notion that like, I'm just a gym, or I'm just a gym owner. We just do gym things here. It's not going to work.
And kind of to come full circle too, is like, if we want to create that culture, we have to have a program that's sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. Like you have to be giving something to people that they can do for not just 3-4 years, but literally, like, if you want to have good retention, like, you need to be thinking like decades.
Yeah.
And how do you have that? And part of that is by giving people progression through what I believe is learning and playing new sports. That's easier here in Park City, possibly, right? Because we live in a really active town. But really what people are looking for, I think, is progression, right?
Mm-hmm.
They thrive on that. And if progression is going to stop, and we know this, and it's not like it doesn't mean the program's wrong or it's bad. At some point, progression in the gym is going to stop. Like, I'm telling you right now, from 2017, my numbers have been dropping. Like, it doesn't mean the program's ineffective. Just my path and my journey was different, right? So like, my numbers are less, my times are slower, my weights are lower. I haven't hit a PR, but it doesn't mean the program's wrong, right? But where I see progression is through sports. So that's why I do that. I love dirt biking, and I'm not that great at it, right? But what I love about it is that every time I go, I get a little bit better. I love downhill mountain biking because there's constantly a different way to look at the trail and different feedback and a different way to ride the trail. And I went with my son yesterday, and he just turned 13 and he smoked me. And I was like, how cool that, like, I was able to share this experience with him. And now he is like absolutely smoke checking me.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I can do that through so many more expressions outside the gym than inside, because you can only do so many thrusters, so many couplets, so many triplets. And it's not bad or wrong. It's just that the progression there is going to be much shorter lived than all these options that you have outside the gym. But to do that option, you have to have the base level inside the gym.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that kind of nails it too, right? Like, and so many people do gloss over that learn and play new sports thing. It's one of those things where I think when you're new in the journey and you read it, you're just like, that's a weird thing to put in here. It doesn't make any sense with meats, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Like, learn and play. To them, they think like, you want me to go play kickball? That's always my joke, right? But it's never been about that. It's that, you know, Greg was smart enough to know that, like, if we don't give you the ability to implement and apply everything that you do here, you're not going to appreciate what it is that's done here. And inevitably, to your point, Chris, like, that scale slows, that it stops, right? To the point, because if you engage in selling adaptation, you're going to have a bad time, right? Because like, that takes evolution, and adaptation takes a long time, but progression in true like demonstration and development of improvement, that is infinitely attainable, right? To like your point, the thing that kept me skiing was that I was realizing that I was getting back to where I used to be. And I bought a gadget, I bought those carve insoles, but that told me every time I was skiing that I was trying to get a new ski IQ. And like, to your point, like, progression is the thing that drives you. Getting back on a mountain bike was about like, can I jump like I could when I was a kid? Like, and it's those things. And I think that you learn that through fitness, and not to defeat or to defy fitness, because until you establish those benchmarks and you hit those benchmarks and you understand what goes into improving those benchmarks, you really begin to appreciate like progression. Like, I'm getting better at something. And so I think that there's two parts of the journey, but if you don't give them, to your point, Chris, like something to look at, to get better at, they're not going to continue to do it indefinitely. And there is no better way than being like, hey, go play. Because that's when you get to really appreciate that, like, wow, as a 40-year-old, I'm keeping up with 20-year-olds, or like, I can crash and get back up and I didn't get taken down to the bottom of the hill, right? Like, there's all those things where the gym is just telling you what you're still bad at, right? Like, it's still just, yep, still can't lift that one, sorry. But out here, you get to be like, wow, like, I'm literally keeping up with people half my age. Like, while everybody else my age is like literally just counting down until they die, people like us, not to say that we're old, Chris, but like, I'm still adding on, right? Like I'm still getting better. I'm still improving. I'm still learning new sports, like things that I would have not even remotely touched when I was in my 20s. I stopped skiing and mountain biking in my 20s, and you could definitely never told me I was going to be an ultra athlete. Like that would have been like, I don't even want to walk anywhere. Like,
and I think, yeah, and we just like, I think people, you just have to remember it's not separate from the program. You're not abandoning ship. Like, in fact, you're arguably like doing it better than probably most people because you're actually doing it as part of the program.
Yeah.
Right. Like if that's the way it's written, like if you want to be like true OG, you want to be like true old school, like through and through, then I'm like true OG, you're never going to the CrossFit Games. Never. Because like your variety is so ridiculous that you can't have the time to specialize and snatch 300 pounds and do Fran in under 2 minutes. Like you're just doing too many things and having an absolute riot doing it. Like that's true OG. Like really, really, I think.
And I think I agree with you. And I think, when we, not to get to make games a subject, but, when we talk about, back in the original days, you guys would find something, do something for the hell of it and just play with it. Like, yeah, I'm going to try this. When we get to the games now and there's something thrown in, like, the crossover double unders or something,
loses their mind, yeah.
Everybody loses his mind because they don't play anymore because they're in the gym. They're like, oh, pegboards are going to be in the games and my handstands are now freestanding handstands. Yeah. And they do it for a specific purpose, not just to, I'm just going to screw around with this and see how it goes.
Yeah.
To have that, like most primary schoolers would have done, better at that movement, arguably, because that's what they muck around with. But when they're at that pointy tip of the spear now, there's no more play. It's like, will this be in the games? Probably not. Well, I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah.
When it's written there in black and white in the 100 Words of Fitness, like that stuff is there. It's like they need to get back to playing as well at whatever level you're at.
And I think, and this is, I'm going in like uncharted territory here, the way that I approach things. And like I said, I really don't think it's popular and I'm okay with it. But like to facilitate that, we can't just throttle ourselves every day. If I'm going to really embrace, like, yes, intensity is good within its correct parameters and the right dosing, the right time and right place, right? But if I'm also going to express this outside, I can't just be so like hobbled from throttling myself every day that I have to have some kind of flow of intensity throughout the week. Right. And I put up a post the other day and it's like, or last week, and it's, it's so much easier to program workouts that absolutely crush you every day than it is to program a flow of intensity that keeps you coming back in the door day after day. And people are like, yes, yes, I agree. But is that really happening? Yeah. Like in your gym, in your garage, when you go work out, are you really doing that? Or are you falling trapped to that? I got to crush myself today. Yeah. I'm not doing it right if I don't crush myself. Yeah. And there are days where, you can set yourself up for that. Absolutely. But there's also should be times where it's like, no, I'm like, hey, I'm going to work hard. It's cool. Like I'm going to still work hard. Right. But after I work hard here, I'm going to like make sure I can go for that trail run with my buddy after work. Cause like maybe my buddy just needs a friend to talk to and I'm going to go run with him at a conversational pace and enjoy it. Or I'm going to make sure that I have time to go ride my bike with my kids. Or I'm going to like fill in the blank, right? I'm going to go learn how to play pickleball. I'm going to go whatever and not just be exhausted to do it. So like, gosh, I think people underestimate the value of that and how, what I believe, like if we really want this thing to be sustainable in a gym for decades, we got to embrace that. Like and it's okay, right? It's okay. I think sometimes when people hear me talk, they might think that now it's like, oh, Chris must think CrossFit's bad or wrong. No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, like the community is amazing. I love it. And I want it to be successful for 2 more decades, but I'm just someone that's willing to say like, hey, I think that might need to look a little different if we want it to be that way. And so here's how I'm trying to do it. And I don't know all the answers, right? But like, let's just own it. Just own it. Like you can't do it forever. And that's okay. So what do we do to make it so you can do it forever?
Yeah, I think the power of your story is particularly as one of the more identifiable athletes of intensity, right? Like, there's very few people on record who could go as hard in the paint as Chris Spealler. Like, we know that to be true. If it was going to be a grind, it was going to be a top finish, right? And I think what's important about that narrative is just, coming full circle to that, is that with you understanding and appreciating and getting people back outside the gym, or understanding the value of getting those things outside the gym, it was never about, CrossFit's bad, et cetera. It's that like, hey, oh wait, I also too kind of missed the mark. And like, this is the more fun part of all that stuff. Like I enjoyed, and I'm speaking for you, obviously, like I know you enjoyed that time, that era of competitive fitness, best area of your life. But like, this is like more fulfilling. And you've said a few things in there, like throughout this whole podcast, which is just, they're all quality of life things. I'm going to go for a trail run because my buddy just needs somebody. Like, be that friend, right? Like, that's a very, very empowering thing to be like, yeah, dude, I'll absolutely go run a 10K with you with no training because I don't need it. Right? Like, if you call me up, you're like, hey, so-and-so just dropped out. Well, you want to go do this event with me? I'm like, yeah, let me see if I can get a flight out there. Like, that is the value of fitness. And I think what's very cool is to see people like yourself who were identifiably the pinnacle of intensity, understanding like, but all of that stuff, even all of that stuff was still just so that like, when my buddy calls me, I can be there, right? Like when my family needs me, I can be there. When something comes up that seems fun for me, like trying to learn how to this motocross thing to do in this race, I'm like, that thing is stupid. I would die on that race. Like there's just no way. I'm terrible on motorized two-wheel vehicles, but like that is the point of fitness. And like that I think is very cool about your story. And I think you do such a good job of breaking it down and really continually telling that narrative that like, hey, it's okay. Have you considered this? Think about this. Like, and I think you're one of the best people to do that, because it's not life versus, fitness, or life versus intensity. It's like fitness in service of life and intensity. And that part, I think you're uniquely qualified to speak to that.
Thanks, man. And like, for those of you guys that are processing through this and trying to figure it all out, like, what a privilege, man. Like, what a privilege for you to be able to say twofold, hey, I have the fitness to go do whatever on a whim with a buddy, right? And I also have the maturity as like someone that's been training for a long time to be able to do it and not feel bad about not going in the gym and throttling myself with another couplet or triplet. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to do that enough that it's okay if I skip that to go downhill mountain bike with my kid today. It's okay if I skip that to go for that run, because guess what? I'm going to go back in the gym tomorrow. I'm going to hit it. Like we're going to be good. It's all part of the training. It's not separate. It's all part of that.
And that is the framework to the point of this whole conversation. That's the framework to longevity. And if you guys are going to make long-term money, you've got to play the long-term game. There's a lot of money in short-term wins and short-term gains, but it dries up quick, and that staying power is limited. And, to the point of it all, it's like, it's not about what you do for fitness these days. It's about what you do with your fitness these days. And I think, Chris, you do such an identifiably cool job, with the relationship you have with Pivot and, getting out and like the father you've become, and really just the trajectory that you've taken Park City Fit. You really, both you and Spencer, you've both done a great job of really, taking this on as like, hey, did we forget about the point of this being life? Like, it's almost like comically, we kind of did, right? Like, we're like, oh yeah, I forgot. I was so bent on, PRs and benchmarks. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. My third or fourth session came at the expense of time with my friend, or I couldn't be there, or like, and so it's cool to see so many people get back to that point. I think that the landscape as a whole is primed for it. And I hope that they are. Maybe I'm biased because I'm at that part of my journey too, but I think a lot of us are there now. And I think that a lot of those people who were always looked up to as coaches and, in avatars, getting outside and doing more things, people are like, oh, I want to go do, something crazy like Diesel Day, or I want to go learn about ride a mountain bike, or I'm going to go try to learn to ski as an adult and stuff that like people who are 40 years old usually write off. They're like, that's what kids do. So
yeah, totally.
It's just about having fun, living your life.
Yeah, imagine that. Well, cool.
Imagine.
Well, sir, so you got a lot of things coming up. I won't take up any more of your time because I know you're as busy as anybody else, and I also want you to go play. So I'll give you some time to go do that. But you've got a lot of things going on right now. How do the people listening to this better find you, engage with you, spend time with you, learn more about you, and appreciate the quality of Chris Spealler's life?
Yeah, I mean, we just went through a big rebrand, and like I said, I don't know that it's something that people resonate with, but we really encourage people to have adventure as part of their fitness. So you can find that at Park City Fit. You can check out our Instagram page there. We're still kind of in the process of getting some website stuff done, but Instagram, you can Park City Fit. My social, C Spealler, you can check that out there. Spencer and I are really working on getting a group together that's asking these questions, right? That's starting to process through this. And what does this look like? And how do we sort of disrupt this cycle that maybe we've gotten stuck in? So we're going to have an event in Park City the end of September. We're looking at September 29th through October 1st, where we really sit down and help you guys understand what that looks like, how to do that. And we're going to have that be a really cool all-inclusive thing where people are going to come in and kick it, hang out on an Airbnb, and we're going to get you guys in the gym for some training. We're going to get you guys asking those questions and figuring out how do we redefine that. We're going to get you outside and experiencing some adventure outside the gym so you can start to embrace that as part of it. So stay posted for that. You'll be able to see that on my story and my social as well as Spencer's. So we'll have that coming down the pipeline. And then other just kind of fun stuff. I'm going to Whistler in 2 weeks to ride bikes with my family. So I'll be up there and navigating the massive crankworks, but I'm going to try to go ride at Squamish, and Whistler and Pemberton. And then I'll be in Hawaii for the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run, supporting that gang, middle of September. So, hey, if like any of you guys are there, if you see me, don't hesitate to reach out, and man, let's connect on what it looks like to do this in that next chapter.
I'm going to go book my flight to Whistler now. So
let's go.
Look out.
I wanted to get out there all summer anyways. I'm like, oh, yeah, just 2 weeks.
Dude, no, like, what's the flights? It's perfect. It's perfect excuse. Let's go ride, man.
Fancy seeing you here.
Hey, that's weird.
Hey.
I didn't expect to see you on the trail. This is outstanding.
Imagine that.
Tony the stalker. But well, thank you for your time today, Chris. We've really loved it. I know we will have you back on again, and for sharing your story and insights. It's been awesome.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Everybody that's listening, I know this is maybe a little bit off your radar. It doesn't sound like overhead squats and benchmarks and clean PRs, but I promise you, if you can just pay attention to the conversation that Chris is doing such a good job of facilitating, there is so much value in the long-term play for what you guys are trying to do. Just follow, just listen, pay attention, be a student of life, learn something new, and get your life back.
Perfect. Well said. All right. Thanks, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Thank you.